it!
Charles Oliveira, the current lightweight champion of the world, missed weight, and this is what has taken the entire story of UFC 274. And now, no matter what he does, if he wins or loses Saturday night, he is not going to be the lightweight champion anymore. And if he wins, the lightweight title is going to be vacant. And if Justin Gaethje wins, obviously he becomes the new champion. This is going to cause a big stir in the lightweight division, and probably for the rest of the UFC, because this is one of the first times that fighters missed weight and had to take a substantial consequence for missing that weight. So I found this news out like literally Friday afternoon, and I had to redo this entire video because this does change a few things. And going into this fight, Justin Gaethje, it's win or lose, take off, win off, or if he ends up losing, he does have a good argument for him to get a rematch. Oliveira has had some issues making weight back whenever he was fighting at featherweight at 145. As far as for lightweight, I don't believe he's had any big issues in this division, but obviously this is one that's going to have to cost him the absolute most. Losing his title without even having to lose to an opponent. Going into this fight now, some people may think this takes some pressure off Justin Gaethje, but this is one of those things where Justin Gaethje has to stay even more determined and more focused in and locked in, knowing that his opponent already lost on the scales. And maybe that does take a little bit of pressure off of him, but Justin Gaethje doesn't want to just beat Oliveira. He wants to become the champion. And so this is an opportunity that Justin Gaethje is not going to let slide through his hands. I hope not. So I'm looking to see Justin Gaethje come out disciplined and still following his game plan with even more confidence. So some folks are speculating that this means that Justin Gaethje has less pressure on him, but I think it's the contrary. I think Justin Gaethje still has to stay determined and focused, knowing that this opportunity is, any opportunity at the title is very rare and a really great blessing, and he's needing to stay focused and go out there and execute. That means he cannot go out there and just guns blazing. He has to stay disciplined, listen to his game plan, knowing that Oliveira has probably already put himself through the ringer just trying to make weight. Should give Justin Gaethje the upper hand, but going into this fight, he knows he cannot be careless. Missing weight for Oliveira must have taken some steam out of his engine, and like I said, he has had issues with it before, but if he's able to go out there and perform, the best thing that he can do is win the fight. Best case scenario for Oliveira is that he wins, he beats Justin Gaethje, and that he finds himself in the same predicament that he was whenever he won the title, having to fight somebody else for the vacant title. And so this is going to be a very impactful fight for the rest of the lightweight division. Getting into the actual fight itself, I think Justin Gaethje is going to be a waterfall whenever he fights. You know, Justin Gaethje puts a lot of pressure, a lot of pace, and a lot of power on his opponents, and they either wither away or they're able to withstand a storm and be able to chip apart at Justin Gaethje. But in his last outing against Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje looked absolutely phenomenal. And although that was one of the best fights I've seen almost of all time, pretty much fight of the year in 2021, I think it was a close back and forth, but Justin Gaethje was also being very destructive and being very efficient, which I think is going to be very key whenever you're going against Oliveira, who is great at counter-striking and has proved himself to be just as competent on the stand-up game as he is on the jiu-jitsu game or on the ground. And there was a moment in his fight with Michael Chandler where Justin Gaethje was threatened by a takedown and ended up getting taken down for a moment, but was able to bounce back almost instantly and find himself in a better position. And I think mentally that took a major toll on the rest of the fight for Michael Chandler. You know, whenever Justin Gaethje was able to withstand that takedown and still find himself in a good spot, it must have just put a different type of mindset in him. He showed that whenever he was going against Tony Ferguson, he was able to use his striking to open up a lot of different takedown opportunities and to be able to deal with the unorthodox attacks that Tony Ferguson has to offer. He definitely proved that whenever he fought against Michael Chandler after he got hurt very badly in the first round and was able to rally back and finish Michael Chandler in the second because he was able to land that perfect counter. He literally took that first round, shook it off, was able to mentally focus on what he had to do in the second round. And then in his last outing against Dustin Poirier, the same exact thing. Had a bit of a rough first round, was able to settle himself, focus in on what he needed to do, use his striking to get him very close to Dustin and find himself in a great position to land a submission. And that's one of the things I think that Oliveira is very overlooked with doing, is that he uses his striking not only to do damage and to land cleanly and to completely knock somebody's lights out, but also to put himself into opportunities to get to his top tier jiu-jitsu game. And I think that's something that Justin Gaethje cannot allow himself to be swinging wildly and to leave himself vulnerable to falling into these jiu-jitsu traps. And so one of the things that Justin Gaethje does very well is that although he has an All-American wrestling background, he uses his wrestling more for a defensive maneuver. And so although he could be a ground and pound guy, he doesn't. He ends up just stuffing takedowns, standing it back up into the realm that he enjoys to fight at, which is definitely with the striking. But people seem to give Justin Gaethje the favor whenever it comes to striking, which I think when it comes to grit and being able to withstand more damage, Justin Gaethje does take that. But when it comes to being able to land effectively and countering and timing out his shots, I think Oliveira takes it in that realm as well. One of the best things I saw Justin Gaethje do against the Michael Chandler fight was setting up his combinations and staying consistent with them and committing to them whenever he was landing his check hook uppercut combo, which literally rocked Michael Chandler at one point in the fight, and also fighting the fight at multiple levels. That was another thing that Michael Chandler did really well at challenging Justin Gaethje, from going to the stand-up to stuffing takedowns to being able to deal with being in the clinch for a while too. So with all that being said, I think that we're in for a close fight still on Saturday night. I know that Oliveira probably is beating himself up for missing weight, and Justin Gaethje is still zeroed in, focused in on what he needs to do. And although I don't see Justin Gaethje finishing Oliveira in the first round, I think by the third round, he's going to be able to contain Oliveira, and we may see a quick rally from Oliveira, but I believe ultimately in the third round, Justin Gaethje is going to win via TKO and become the new lightweight champion. The only question is will Oliveira have another shot at the title? Will Oliveira be able to deal with the fact that he missed weight? What will be the repercussions of him having to lose and vacate his title when it comes to these terms? All right, next up is the co-main event. Rose Namajunas, the strawweight champion for the women's division, is going against Carla Esparza. And many may not realize that this fight is actually a rematch. These two actually met about 8 years ago for the Ultimate Fighter season finale, and Carla Esparza actually got the best of Rose whenever she was able to submit her in the second round via submission. And going into this fight, as much as I would like to say that things changed and things may be different, I seriously doubt it. Both of these fighters have stayed pretty consistent in sharpening the skills that they already had and that they already showed in the first time. And this is a fight that Rose Namajunas herself was calling for. This wasn't something that Carla was catapulted for or was set up for by dominating through the entire division for. This is something that Rose Namajunas kept in her head and had a chip on her shoulder about, and she wants to prove herself. She wants to be able to redeem herself and get this win back from somebody who beat her. I think for this one, it's going to be to follow the same game plan as usual for Rose Namajunas. I believe that she's going to focus on efficiency, managing her distance, being able to stuff Carla Esparza's takedowns are going to be one of the bigger things that she's going to have to focus on, and also making sure that she is staying consistent with her cardio, which we haven't really seen Rose have any issues when it comes to her cardio. She has a great gas tank. She's been in there with absolute killers like Zhang Wei Li and Joanna, and I think that when she landed that beautiful head kick KO, I think it just gave her that confidence of being able to overcome somebody who beat her before and being able to land efficiently, knowing that she has the confidence to land that one big strike that puts out top-tier fighters. So for Esparza to be successful in this one, she's going to have to get Rose on the ground multiple times, and that's going to have to happen quick and often, hopefully starting off in the first round. If she's not able to get Rose on the ground in the first round, or at least pressure her up against the cage and make her feel her presence, then it's going to be a long night out for Carla Esparza. I do believe she does have some great experience when it comes to going the distance, and she's also very, very deadly with her ground and pound. But Rose has been shown to be pretty balanced when it comes to being on the ground, being able to stuff takedowns, and being able to fight her fight at her own pace. Getting Rose thrown off of her pace, especially when she's into her flow state or her zone, is very, very difficult to do. The other surprising thing that I feel like folks have started to realize from Thug Rose is that she is deadly with her striking, that she doesn't just have to hit you multiple times to get you out of there. She can land that one strike that ends the show. I think that Rose Namajunas also puts on great performances when it comes down to overcoming the adversity and the mental warfare that she goes through to get ready for these opponents in these fights. So if cardio and endurance doesn't become an issue for these ladies, and if Rose is able to deal with the rough ground and pound and takedown threat that Carla Esparza presents, and if Carla Esparza is able to deal with the distance and the power that Rose presents, I believe that the only thing left to determine is how efficient each one of them is going to be able to be. And when it comes to terms of efficiency, I don't see anybody else in the UFC being more as efficient as Rose Namajunas. So as much as I would like to say that Rose is going to win via second round TKO, I believe ultimately it's going to come down to a decision victory for Rose Namajunas. So getting into the last fight that I'm going to talk about today is going to be Michael Chandler versus El Cucuy, Tony Ferguson. And this one's going to be at the 155 lightweight division. And given the news that just happened with Charles Oliveira, this one could potentially be another #1 contender fight. So after coming off a sensational debut against Dan Hooker, Michael Chandler finds himself in a rough spot with a couple of losses behind him, but they were very, very great fights and very, very high risk and worthy opponents. And no one can blame him for taking these losses. He lost against Charles Oliveira, where Oliveira was able to clinch his lightweight title. And after having Oliveira rocked in the first round, unfortunately, Michael Chandler slipped and got caught in the second round and therefore lost. And then in his last outing against Justin Gaethje, which happened to be, like I said, one of the best fights of all time, he was in an all-out brawl, and by no means was it a bad showing for him. Michael Chandler fought that last fight against Justin Gaethje, going to die in that octagon, and there's nothing that we can do except commend him for that. At least I can. And yeah, he fought that fight standing up. He fought it in the clinch. He tried to get it to the ground. That fight was the epitome of what MMA is all about. Tony Ferguson, on the other hand, is coming off a tough skid of losses. He lost to Justin Gaethje. He has lost to Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush. And yeah, so this is going to be a do or die moment for both of these fighters. Both of them desperately need a win, and this could be it for maybe both of them. I doubt it's going to be it for Chandler if he loses, but this may be it for Okukui if he loses. It may be time to have that talk with Dana about what his future holds with or without fighting. And he seemed like he had a chip on his shoulder there at the interviews that they were doing during the media and the pressers. But coming into this fight, after finding out what's happened to Oliveira, this may be that spark that both of these fighters need to leave it all out on the line, as if they didn't need a reason already. Both of these guys don't know how to put on a boring fight. Each one of their fights are cannot miss type of fights that you don't want to blink for. And getting to this fight and how it's actually going to play out, I think that Tony Ferguson is going to try to find his rhythm as soon as possible. We all know that he's known for his unorthodox type of striking and his type of attacks and his deadly elbows. And even when he gets to the ground, he's a very, very diverse jiu-jitsu specialist. He's a threat from his back. He's a threat from being on top of somebody. And although he's had some issues in his past recent fights, there's no overlooking the phenom that is Okukui. I mean, there is not an easy night out when it comes to this guy. And especially with Michael Chandler on the other side of that, he is ready to give it his all no matter what. And whenever he goes out there, he's very explosive. He's very dynamic when it comes to his athleticism. And he's willing to try different things if his first game plan. One of the things he was doing really well against the Justin Gaethje fight was that he was finding his leg kicks and they were landing very efficiently. I don't know if Justin may have checked one of them very well, but it seemed like as the fight went on, Michael Chandler stopped throwing the leg kicks as heavily and as often. So although many folks may be expecting that this is going to be a walkthrough fight for Chandler, I don't think that he's going to get the withered and weathered Tony Ferguson that so many folks are claiming is going to show up on Saturday night. I think Tony Ferguson knows what's on the line. I think he knows that his back's against the wall. And I think that means we may see a very dangerous, more dominant Tony Ferguson that we're used to seeing in the past. I think to be successful, Tony Ferguson's going to have to find his rhythm very fast and very early. And the faster that he's able to make Michael Chandler uncomfortable is going to be better for him. The other thing he has to watch out for is that Michael Chandler is very explosive when folks least expect it. The athleticism that Michael Chandler brings to his fighting is spectacular. I mean, the way that he just explodes and commits to the strikes that he's willing to take. And even if he ends up in a bad spot, you're never going to find Michael Chandler just accepting bad positions. You have to put him there and also keep him there. Something that I think Tony Ferguson is very experienced in doing, but he has to execute at a very, very high level. So with all that being said, I believe that Saturday night is going to be the comeback fight for Tony Ferguson. I think that he's going to be able to go out there. It's not going to be easy. By no means necessary is it going to be easy, but he's going to be out there and be able to find his rhythm, find a little bit more of himself that he may have lost in the past recent fights, and be able to win the fight via second round submission. So I think we're in for another great night of fights, guys. This is probably going to be the pay-per-view event of the year. Cowboy Cerrone, this is going to be his last time coming out to the cage. Also with Shogun, he's going to be fighting as well. So we got a lot of veteran names as well as some upcoming talents that we're looking to see the best out of. Also, before we wrap this all up, my prelim fighter to watch is going to be Brandon Royval. He's fighting at the flyweight division, and honestly, I think he's one of the top contenders who can give Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno a threat. And yeah, I'm looking to see him put on a great performance against Matthew Schnell and hopefully catapult himself into the main card and possibly getting a title shot after Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno go at it again. So with all that being said, guys, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't yet, please follow the Combat Contact Twitter page. Let me know what you got picked to win on Saturday. And as always, stay safe, stay blessed. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.